Good evening. Welcome to the August 18th, 2022 meeting of the Mount Juliet Municipal and Regional Planning Commission. Before I talk about the actual agenda, there may be some folks here that are here to discuss the property at 13506 Lebanon Road. You may have received a notice for that. That item has been moved to September 15th Planning Commission. So if you're here to talk about that or to listen to that or make comments, that is deferred until that meeting in September. There was a notice that went out and it was not followed up. So, or we had some folks that showed up that were here to talk about that one. So if you're here to talk about that one, we're moving that one to September. Now we're setting the agenda. Item 7.1 has been deferred by the applicant for 1 month. It's set to be heard at 9/15/2022. Are there any other changes to the agenda? No, we're good. Okay, now we hear from City Planner and Public Works Department reports.
Thank you. I'll mention that the new planning technician started this week.
His name is Kenny. We have another Kenny in the city. So Kenny Howell, he has been, I think Tuesday was his first day. And so far he's, Tyler's been showing him the ropes up front there so far. So it's good. So not here tonight, but maybe next month. And that's all I have. Jill, you got anything?
Andy? Yeah.
On the Public Works engineering side of the fence, we have a few updates going on. If anybody lives in and around the Willoughby Station area, you'll probably see some tree clearing going on out there. That's a very exciting first step. So as part of our roundabout project there at that intersection, we are having to get some trees out of the way so that utilities can move. So while the construction on the roundabout itself is not let to construction yet, we are moving ahead with getting things out of the way, basically, so the work can happen. So as it stands, look for that project to be bid to construction later this year, starting construction probably towards the end of the year. And I would say we're looking at about an 18 to 24 month time frame for construction. It's not necessarily an easy project to build, but excited to see that one going. Similarly, if you're down by Providence Parkway, it's a small project, but it's going to tie to the South Mount Juliet Road project. See an additional turn lane being done over there in front of the old Body Shop Fitness chiropractor's office now by South Kroger and Publix. So that one is going to also have a traffic signal as well. And originally we had talked about a roundabout there, but the site was too constrained. So the work on the roadway is mostly done, and excited to see that happen. And so that is another one. I got to say kudos to Matt White, our deputy director, on both of those. He's been doing the heavy lifting, seeing those to construction. And so excited to see some of those happening out there as well. And so we've got an exciting announcement on I'd say a much larger project, was Providence Parkway. That one we are planning to have the ribbon cutting for the opening for that roadway Monday morning, this coming Monday morning at 7:30. So new road, as soon as that's open, we'll get that open to traffic. Just say for the general public, be patient as construction traffic is still in and around. It's an active construction zone while the road's open. You're going to see construction in and around that for a long time. So that's exciting. We'll see Adams Lane end up getting closed off between Kids Country Club, if you know where that's at, the old Graves Fitness, between there and Central Pike. So the old dangerous 2-lane section will be no more. We might be able to have the developments use a portion of it here or there for interconnectivity, but as far as the actual roadway, that'll get shut down so that then the development team can go through and realign Adams Lane down to Providence Parkway. So just be aware, you're going to have a temporary cul-de-sac there for a little while. Use Crossing Circle, use Crossings Lane, going down, if you know, going by Walgreens to cut between the two roadways. So be mindful of that. Be patient with us as we deal with the change in traffic patterns. There'll be some growing pains on that. But that's very exciting to finally see that road get completed. And so, and we'll probably have something that's pertinent to one of our items tonight. Item 8.2 for the Village of Pleasant Grove Road is the actual public meeting for the Pleasant Grove Road widening project, which we might discuss a little bit later. But we're going to have a public meeting for that project here in the next month or so. Should have more information by the next planning commission on setting something permanently. So if anybody's interested in that project, we're finalizing all of our documentation to give a presentation to our commissioners, elected body, and the general public at large. So excited about that project as well, getting it going along. So a lot more happening. Look for the stormwater project in Mundy Park, which is a major detention pond. How many acres, Shane? Yeah, I think it's pushing 100 acres of drainage. Yeah, you're talking, this is a pretty major headwater to Stoner Creek. And so everybody's well aware of the flooding issues that we have on Stoner Creek. And this is a very vital project to help control some of that water at the start and help control not just that overall, the whole system, but particularly in the Belinda City area. So very excited to see that project going. I think, Shane, can you know the time frame for completion?
120 days from the start.
120 days. So it'll be done by the end of the year. So if my math's right. So anyway, that's a lot of good, exciting stuff going on. And we have a lot more, of course, but that's the highlights.
Thank you, Andy. I want to commend you again getting the bridge done. I mean, it's funny. You can tell who the Mount Juliet natives are because they all stay in the outside lane, and all the new folks, they come to that inside lane and go on through. So it's good to have that open. Makes things a whole lot less confusing up there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, at this time, we'll take some citizen comments. The public is welcome, encouraged to make public comment about any item on the agenda. There'll be two opportunities for you to make comments. You might speak now or speak when the item is presented to the Planning Commission. We ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and anyone that wishes to address the Planning Commission is asked to come forward at this time. Seeing no takers. We'll now review the minutes, approve the minutes from last month from the July 21st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any edits, changes? No. Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, signify by raising your hand saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Passes. All right. Now we're going to go through the consent agenda. First one is item 3.1, review the site plan for Landmark Homes office building located at 6064 Central Pike. Item 3.2, review the site plan for 3152 North Mount Juliet Road. Item 3.3, review the site plan for Legacy Point Retail Building located at Legacy Point, lot number 8. And review the subdivision regulation amendment, SEC 1-116 dedications. Any citizen comments? If you'd like to make any comments on any item on the consent agenda, please step forward. No. Any comments from staff?
Yes, I'd just like to say,
Approval for all these, obviously, with the conditions listed. Also, there's a few, 3 of them include design waivers for the buildings. They're, minor secondary materials, not out of line with what routinely gets approved via waivers via the Planning Commission. So I just want to bring that up. So,
Okay. Andy?
No additional comments.
Okay. You make a motion to accept.
Motion to accept consent agenda items based on staff recommendations.
Got a second? Okay. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain. Consent agenda items pass. Okay, at this time, we'll close the planning commission meeting and open a public hearing for item 6.1, which is review the final plat for the Lamont property located at 1400 Fairview Drive. Are there any citizen comments at this time on this item 6.1? Oh, I gotta go back to those. Gotta close it. Excuse me, I'm the backup quarterback. Sometimes I need a little bit of help. We'll work our way through this. Okay. So let's close the public hearing and let's hear item 4.1, which is a rezone. Review the rezone request from RS 40 to commercial mixed use for the 615 Rutland Drive. Where we go? This time we'll take, we go staff. This time we'll take some citizen comments. Public is welcome, encouraged to make public comment on this item. If you'd like to make a comment, please step forward, state your name and address, please. Seeing no comments, any comments from staff?
They submitted a site plan with this, and you can see it's for a liquor store. The land use plan supports the request, and the zoning requested is supported by land use, all that. So staff doesn't have any issues with either of those. There isn't a recommendation about a PUD overlay, perhaps if you guys, wanted to go that route, but as far as planning goes, it's a reasonable request.
Nothing additional on our end.
Open for planning commission comments? Anyone? Okay.
You have one question. I noticed there was a reference to liquor store on this property. Do we know, I know it's not part of the rezone, but since it was mentioned, I've got to ask, is it, I'm looking at our city attorney, 1,000 feet and planning, 1,000 feet to the church?
It is. They've got the buildings oriented on the lot as such to meet that distance.
Okay, so it is, falls outside of the 1,000
Yeah.
feet? Okay, perfect.
Okay, this is a referral item to the Board of City Commission to whether positive or negative recommendation or negative referral.
Correct.
Do I have a motion?
Motion for positive recommendation based on staff comments.
Second.
A motion and a second? Okay. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstains? Motion passes. Here we go. Now I'm back at 5.1. Thanks for the audience participation. Now here, item 5.1, which is review the annexation and plan of services for Tate Lane roadway and right-of-way located at West Division Street north until the 90-degree bend. At this time, we'll take citizens' comments. Anyone used to speak on this matter, please step forward, state your name and address.
Joan Giltner, 1409 Tate Lane. The residents of Tate Lane are very concerned with the annexation of Tate Lane, and we have signed a petition
So-
to that effect, which we would like to submit for the record. This petition was signed by 10 of the 10 potentially impacted residents. The two not included are developers in the city and in Wilson County. The concerns highlighted in this petition concern traffic safety and enforcement and confusion among emergency and law enforcement service providers. The strategic goal for annexation must and should be to improve the overall services or conditions for existing residents. Partial annexation of Tate Lane will not solve our noted concerns. Coordination between the county, city, and residents is imperative to identify a responsible and fair resolution to our concern. And here's the original petition. I do not believe the annexation of Tate Lane should be moved forward without further study of the advantages and disadvantages to local residents as well as the community as a whole. My concern is that the annexation will lead to further development, including rezoning of the few remaining green spaces on Tate Lane, which just a few years ago was a country road. Since 2016, post-preliminary approval of the 36-home Lynn Haven 3 development, the following developments have occurred. We have Green Hill High School. We have continued build-out of Nicholsville. The Hamilton Denson soccer complex is nearing completion, which we were assured would be a practice-only facility, but word within the soccer community is they're already planning to host tournaments there. And while not in the city, there are 12 properties either under construction or in development on the former Zumbro property. In addition, Lynn Haven 3 is being ramrodded towards construction. While this development meets the city's technical requirements, it will more than triple current Tate Lane traffic volume, which again, impacts need to be studied. For example, in addition to the sheer volume of traffic, has anyone considered school bus access and their navigation of the steep incline at the railroad tracks and speed hump? What about the impacts of construction and delivery trucks accessing the southern part of Tate Lane from Lebanon Road? They do not always travel from West Division. And of course, these same trucks are causing damage traveling the lane from West Division. Recall that the only reason Lynn Haven 3 is accessing Tate Lane rather than connecting with the rest of the Lynn Haven subdivision is because the Due West City residents outnumbered the Tate Lane County residents at the preliminary planning meetings. Thus, access for Lynn Haven 3 was redirected from Due West to Tate Lane. Again, if the volume was too great for Due West, how can it be good for Tate Lane? With respect to traffic exiting the practice soccer complex, the city has indicated that they plan to rely on signage to discourage traffic from traveling north on Tate Lane. According to Andy Barlow, the city's Director of Public Works, physical barriers such as restrictive curbing do not deter traffic movement. It has already been observed following this year's fireworks that traffic intending to exit southbound on Tate Lane redirects northbound as soon as the intersection at West Division begins backing up. So what's the plan? It has already been proven that signage does not work on Tate Lane. It would also be nice if the city made an attempt to blend the fields into the lane environment by installing a tree line that would provide privacy and noise reduction barriers between Tate Lane and the fields. Annexation of Tate Lane also opens the door to extending sewer and rezoning existing green spaces undeveloped in a manner inconsistent with the historical and current country setting of Tate Lane. The Tate Lane residents understand this annexation is part of a larger plan to connect Lebanon Road to West Virginia via West Division via, it's a long way, via the extension of Benton Douglas Parkway. Tate Lane is also being considered for connection to Central Pike. It is unlikely that this extension will proceed anytime in the near future, and it is even more unlikely that Miss Linda Tate will cede the required property. Also, has a traffic study been completed to ensure West Division can accommodate additional traffic? And also look at the traffic turning off of West Division onto Tate Lane, given the short turning radiuses. Lastly, not that anyone apparently cares, what about the wildlife, including deer and wild turkeys that inhabit Tate Lane green spaces? Where are they supposed to go? In closing, I'm not anti-development. I'm pro-traffic safety, both vehicular and pedestrian, to hopefully limit serious injury to both the residents and users of Tate Lane. We look forward to working towards thoughtful, continued solutions to manage Tate Lane traffic concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Who do I give this to?
How you
Sharon
doing?
Nolan, 1409 Tate Lane.
Okay.
We have been asking the city for support regarding the Tate Lane traffic concerns, volume, speed enforcement, signage for over 8 years. However, we're experiencing a little bit of whiplash, confusion, and lack of transparency and trust, and here's why. Just 3 weeks ago, the City Commission proposed Tate Lane and South Green Hill roads as potential connectors for the Central Pike Interchange project. Next, we suddenly receive a notice to annex Tate Lane, along with the city's offer for all sorts of newfound support services. However, the proposed annexation still doesn't contain detailed traffic management concerns. In addition, hiding in plain sight, erected some 4 years ago, has been the future home of Benton Douglas Road sign at the end of the northbound end of Tate Lane. We've jokingly referred to it as the sign to nowhere. Well, it appears that the sign to nowhere has a long planned route to intersect with Tate Lane. Keep in mind, this will require authorization to purchase hundreds of acres of family property, land, agricultural land from longstanding Mount Juliet families. I would not expect that sale to be voluntary or these properties to be annexed for the Benton Douglas extension. The annexation, unfortunately, appears like a nice Christmas present. Unfortunately, once you unwrap it, it's a box of coal. It is clear the city's long-range development plans include decimating historic Tate Lane. Help me understand how any of the following are beneficial to the residents directly impacted by this annexation. The approval of 36 new homes on Lynn Haven in the Lynn Haven Phase 3 subdivision. In the past 25 years, there have only been 9 homes constructed in the proposed annexation. 9 in 25 years, and we're proposing to put 36 more. Not hard to do the math here. It will quadruple the safety concerns we've been expressing for the past 8 years. Unfortunately, what seems to be a cavalier or inconsiderate statement, as approved, the Planning Commission believes that the 36 new homes on Tate Lane will only result in a few hundred trips a day. That added to the already disproportionate trips and uses by non-Tate Lane residents. An independent and accurate traffic survey to better understand the anticipated magnitude of traffic safety is required. A few hundred more trips per day is perhaps inconsiderate and insignificant to someone whose personal safety and lack of livability isn't at risk. Joan mentioned Green Hill High School, morning, noon, and night, afternoon cut-through traffic, build out of Nichols Vale. Hamilton Dennis provides the opportunity to be a great revenue source for the city if it moves from a practice complex to something more. Central Pike Connector, Benton Douglas Connector, seasonal special events like Memorial Day and 4th of July fireworks. In addition, it's kind of unconscionable that the proposed annexation excluded our good neighbors, 1405 Tate Lane, Beth Tate Campbell. That curve, at that 90-degree curve, her driveway is clearly in the improved asphalt part of Tate Lane. Most importantly, the majority of documented accidents, DUI-related events, cut-through garbage delivery folks use her driveway as a turnaround to damage her property. Just doesn't seem sense to exclude one of the most impacted homes from this portion of the road annexation.
Ma'am, I'm going to need you to wrap it up soon. It's 3 minutes, please.
Finally, I guess our closing vote is a no to the road annexation of Tate Lane.
Thank you. Step forward, state your name and address for the record. Please confine your comments to 3 minutes if you can.
I will. Jim
Thank you.
Hunter, 1478 Tate Lane, 25 years there, 26 years, excuse me. And I'd like to point out that it's my understanding that we're due a 14-day notice on this letter. Every one of us received the letter on the 12th for this meeting on the 18th. We need to fix that. I believe that a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. I think that first off, there's no benefit for the annexation. Let me just hold this for a moment and blow it up so everybody can see it. This is down the road, when we're looking at it, this is what we're ultimately talking about. We're talking about a bypass, a connector to Central Pike. This is Tate Lane, which you would come across like that. You still didn't get you anywhere. This is South Green Hill Road down to John Wright Road. Take a good look at it, folks. Any questions? That gets you a lot closer to where you want to be. And you might want to discuss the roundabout before you get too deep into it. Just a thought. Any questions or anything on it? I have a little time left. I'd tell you that we talked about it. You got to look at the benefit. There's no benefit to us. It doesn't change the fire protection, doesn't change ambulance protection, anything at all. We're completely happy the way it is right now. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Can you see me?
It can-
I'm Linda Tate. I'm
Please.
going to go at this a whole different
Miss
way.
Tate,
Oh,
will you
can you hear me? Thank you.
State your address for the record, please.
I'm going to start this a different way. I want to talk to y'all about the historical.
State your address for the record, please.
212 Paul Drive.
Thank you.
The historical, I want you to know about the historical lane. If my husband was here, he could tell you 10 stories. I'm got 3 minutes. I'll tell you 2. Andrew Jackson drove his horse and buggy on the lane going west. My late husband's had ancestors that had a mill on the lane that was burned at the Civil War. The Civil War. Just before you make any decision to annex the lane, think about the historical issues involving that precious piece of property. Think about it really hard. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Are there any further citizen comments at this time?
I kind of have a proxy text.
One time. Well, I got one time.
I can't read a proxy from a neighbor.
No, ma'am.
Freddie and Kim.
Hi, I'm Beth. I live at 1405 Tate Lane,
What's your last name?
Jones.
Jones. Thank you.
I'm Linda Tate's daughter who just spoke.
Okay.
So we are very emotionally attached to that property, obviously. The Tates came here on a land grant after the Revolutionary War, and we're one of the few working farms still left in this area, and we want to keep it that way. And we have cattle, and cattle and cars are a bad mix. And my neighbors do not exaggerate. It is a truly dangerous road. I live at the 90-degree turn. As it turns left, my driveway is to the right. It is terrifying pulling out of my driveway because there's so much traffic on that road. It's unbelievable, especially since the new high school. But that's neither here nor there. This message, Freddie and I won't make it. We're not against sidewalks, but we are concerned about emergency calls, and the lack of transparency regarding what happens after the annex gives hesitancy. Those are from my neighbors. But I don't see where the benefit for the city of Mount Juliet is in this annexation. I certainly don't see one for the neighborhood, but for the city of Mount Juliet, I don't know what it gains. If its goal is this future connector, there are better ways to achieve that than coming over that property. That's my opinion. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further citizen comments on this agenda item? Andy, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. You have anything to add to this as far as the city stance?
Yeah, I'd say the need of this is more based on a lot of recent developments. So the Lynn Haven development that was previously mentioned was approved as a PUD, I believe it was back in 2014. They have their vested rights already established. So that development is happening whether annexation comes or not. Similarly, we have the Hamilton Denson Park, the city's park that we acquired, I think a year or two ago, where the soccer fields are being placed. And I think paving was going on that today. So that one's going to be coming to a completion place, I'd say, later this year. Is that right, Shane? I think so. There's those two pieces of properties that are already within the city of Mount Juliet. So you already have an area, and this entire area, I call it one of our donut holes within the city. It's all Wilson Drive, the whole bit.
Can you speak up in general? It's really hard to hear.
Yeah, I don't know if our IT guys can hear me, but I'm close to the mic. So, but anyway, so this is one of the donut holes within the city of Mount Juliet, and so, but we do have some of these annexations that are coming along, and some that are already there. We've actually had interest from Victory Baptist Church as well for wanting to potentially eventually connect the city sewer. With our policies on sewer, that would require annexation as well. So we have a lot of factors at play here with annexation. And so with the Lynn Haven coming along, they actually have a sidewalk requirement that was placed back in 2014. And that would have to go on a private easement, a dedicated area that they had agreed to dedicate to the right of way, but would be a reservation. So instead of having that come later on, if when the road was to be annexed at a later time, that was needed, was best to be done all at one time. And so that's these factors all coming together right now are kind of set the timing for this. I think any comments about Western connectors, and I say it connectors plural. We're not talking, for anybody who's familiar with the history of the city of Mount Juliet, there was a Western connector. It was a partially restricted access roadway, very high speed type facility from the Central Pike interchange all the way to Nautical Road. It was going cross country. It was cutting close to this area here, and it was going to be very impactful on the land around it. That project never materialized. Nothing like that can happen now with the development that's happened over the past 20 plus years. So out of our many transportations plans that we've had over the city in our history, the most recent one stressed the importance of just having connections. And these are connections using where we can existing roads, They could be new alignments. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but trying to maximize those things. There is a need for connections, north-south connections on the western half of our city. That would be between Davidson County and Mount Juliet Road and Central Pike and Lebanon Road, especially as TDOT moves along in development, as slow as it may be on Central Pike Interchange or Central Pike widening itself. There's going to be increased needs. The development and land rights of people, and particularly the Zumbro property, is one where people sell their land. They have a right to sell it, and they have the right to subdivide it, meeting certain conditions that we have in place here. We can't stop development. We're not going to stop it. And so we just have to try to manage it. And having it under the city's ownership helps us in that regard. And so this is more based on the idea of this section. To the point on the historical aspect of it, I know that we have talked at the city level. If Jennifer was here, she could tell a lot about how we would love to see the old portion of the roadway preserved as is. I think it's a great thing for the city. It's a fantastic asset for the city. Drive it or walk it. I don't know, take your chances there, but come around fall here in a month or two, and it's one of the most beautiful places you'll ever find. And those are the kinds of things that we want to see that preserved. I think there's a want and a will there to see that. I don't know how that happens, but having alternate connections around that could be a great thing eventually to help preserve that and keep traffic off of that road as much as possible. The idea is let's have traffic on good roads, not on bad roads, to that effect. And so that's kind of the needs of it from where we're at right now. I think, and I would state that the change in ownership doesn't change anything. We're studying through Western connectors, whether or not this gets annexed. The decisions will go through a lot of planning efforts, a lot of coordination. There'll be opportunities for folks that are concerned about this to speak at that time on that project. And I think that's really a fantastic arena to discuss that and how that's going to be. There's no decisions made on alignments for any kind of Western connectors. This is not necessarily for that per se. It could be useful for that, but it's not for that. Anyway, so there's no set alignments, period, out of that. We haven't even started the study process. We've just had a kickoff meeting with our consultant. So there will be several public meetings that we'll be going through on that as we go through the fall, maybe even into the spring. So I anticipate there'll be a concerted effort on that, and we want to definitely weigh all factors for the benefit of the public. So that's the general idea of why we are where we are. Thank you.
At the last meeting,
Ma'am,
he
ma'am,
specifically said
ma'am.
it was for that.
You've had your opportunity to speak, and we've heard that, and we appreciate that. This is not a rebuttal. You've had your opportunity to speak, and that's the way this runs. Okay? Thank you.
Let me just say something. I just want to say, look, I understand, and I can totally empathize with you. This doesn't start or end here. This is the Planning Commission's going to vote on a positive or negative recommendation, and it'll move forward to the BOC. The BOC will have 2 readings, and you have 2 more opportunities to come before the Board of Commission, which I sit on. So if there's additional comments you would like to make between now and then, I would recommend that you reach out to the city commissioners. I believe Vice Mayor Justice is your commissioner for this district. I would recommend you do that. So with that, well, reach out to your city commissioners, because reach out to the city commissioners. reach out to these city commissioners, because ultimately this will reside on our table to make the decision on.
Any comments from the planning commission?
Just small, just because I want everybody to have a clear understanding. And I know, we know how this process goes because this is what we do. But just to kind of echo what Commissioner Hefner said, tonight is not a vote on whether or not this is approved or not approved. This is just a recommendation that goes to the Board of Commissioners. They are the ones who are the voting body against this or for this. So tonight is when people are heard. And if you have something you want to say that might rebut or you want to add to your comments, take notes from tonight. Bring them back to the next meeting. Present yourself at that point in time. Send emails to the city in the meantime and ask them for any of the comments in between. Meet with your folks in the city. But this is a chance to do that. But this is not a vote tonight. This is more of an exercise to go through the process.
What happens if you don't recommend it tonight?
It still goes to the Board of Commissioners for a vote.
Well, this is a waste of time, really.
Call it what you will.
No matter how it goes tonight, it'll still go to them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we gotta shut
Yeah.
this down.
So, sir, I'm trying to
Okay.
educate you on the process and do you a favor because I don't think you have a clear understanding of how it goes.
Okay. Please come to order. That this is not a discussion. This is a comment from a planning commission member. You will have an opportunity to get in front of the Board of Commissioners and make your comments and make your pleas. But this is not the time to have a debate over this issue. We will vote on either a positive or negative recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. They will take it from there for their two readings. We don't have all the power to say, yes, it's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. It's just a recommendation. And the Planning Commission is going to discuss that. We're going to take a vote on it and it will go to the Board of Commissioners and they will have two readings to discuss that. Well, and I encourage you to come out. You guys are definitely have strong feelings about what's going on here. Come to the Board of Commissioners meetings. Make your voices heard. Okay. Hopefully I wasn't been rude to you, but I'm just saying, come to the Board of Commissioners and talk to them. Okay.
I do have one more comment.
Go ahead.
So,
Sorry.
right. The other thing would be to Andy, if you would, and there's a lot of things to say about this. If you could just help us to summarize in short the benefits of the city annexing this portion of the road versus it being in the county.
I think ultimately is that we're seeing these annexations happen along this roadway already as it is. And there is a confusion sometimes when you have this transition of ownership from being a city property or within the city boundary to being in a county or vice versa. And so as these go along, as we see the potential for more annexations, the idea is to try to reduce those levels of confusion. So we talk about really from the roadway aspect, the only change is going to be police enforcement. Public Works will be able to perform repairs to the roadways, things like that. So that's really all that we're talking about for here right now.
So in essence, they'd have more resources
Correct.
available than they would if it was just in the county.
That's correct. And given the state of the staffing and enforcement of the city police versus the county, I would say that's a definite advantage.
Thank you.
Want to speak? Okay. Do I have a motion on this item? No, do I have one?
The motion. No, asking for one. Motion, positive recommendation.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And abstain?
Keep in mind, this is going to the BOC for two readings. They are ultimately going to decide on whether this is annexed or not. Okay, we needed to move this along, so.
So we have a vote for a positive recommendation to the board. Okay. Okay, at this time, we'll close the planning commission meeting to open a public hearing for item 6.1, review the final plat for the Lamond, hopefully I said that right, for Lamond property located at 1400 Fairview Drive.
Gino?
Well-
Sorry. Oh, 5-2, you skipped one.
I don't have 5.2.
Oh.
5.1 and 5.2 are the same item. Or plan of services annexation.
Voted on.
5.1 was voted out.
Did somebody say, well, trying to get, I didn't hear it say together.
I didn't put them together.
Officially need to be verbalized, annexation and plan of services for positive recommendation. They're combined.
So we need to vote on 5-2?
Correct.
Okay.
Now that wasn't on my agenda.
Yeah, he didn't have it on his agenda. No, it wasn't.
Do the annexation plan of services. Yeah, they were combined. They were combined in 5.1. That's annexation, that's plan of services. This is accent and plan of services.
Okay. Sorry, the agendas are different.
But as described, 5.1 did include both annexation and plan of services.
Just want to be clear, the last agenda I got shows them as 5.1 and 5.2, two separate items.
Yeah, the one they gave us tonight, mine says that.
So,
The original one, it's all in here.
Together. This shows them.
well, we should vote on 5-2
You should vote on 5.2.
or 5-2, right?
Even though it covers both?
It doesn't matter. That's just on your copy. What's been publicized to the public is
Okay.
what's on here.
Okay, so we got to
we're
back
gonna
up. We got to
So just-
reopen.
Yeah, we're just going to
5-2.
move to 5-2.
Okay, let me see.
So
That's
review
weird
the plan of
because-
services.
They're both the same.
Correct.
Okay, we'll hear item 5.2, review the plan of services for Tate Lane roadway and right-of-way located west Division Street, north until a 90-degree bend. Gino, at this point, can we forego citizen comment and staff comment and just vote on this item? Okay. Yeah, and this is a referral to the Board of Commissioners. Looking for a motion on item 5.2 on the distributed agenda.
Motion, positive recommendation on 5.2.
Got a
Plan of
motion,
services.
motion and a second. Okay, all in favor of a positive recommendation, Board of Commissioners, raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Item passes. Okay. Now we'll go back to the much anticipated public hearing. This time we'll close the planning commission to open a public hearing for item 6.1, reviewing the final plat for Lamond Drive property located at 1400 Fairview Drive. Are there any citizen comments at this time? Yes, sir.
Address for the record.
Please state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes if
My
you
name
can.
is Jim Warren. I live at 1406 Fairview Drive.
Okay.
I have the original number on that 1400 property before 911 changed it. We bought back there. I bought back there before the road was ever finished or the water line was ever finished. I lived back there. And I don't know how this could even be considered to build two more houses 50 foot off the street. My next door neighbor, he was in the tornado just like the rest of us was, and he was going to utilize his basement, and they're old, not as old as I am, but their legs is giving out on them, and they built on the basement, and they was going to build a double garage on the house when they had replans.
You pull your mic up closer to you. You can just pull it up.
Pull it up.
There you go. Thank you.
They utilized the basement. They had a drawing where they could do this. Well, they had a double garage on the end of the house where they could drive around and not have to come up a bunch of steps into their house. And the city wouldn't approve it because it was too close to the road. It was 7 foot too close to the road. And it still was way over 50 feet off the road. How could you even consider doing something 50 foot off the road on property that even joins it? This property joins that property on the back side. So I don't see how, I don't even know why it got to the planning commission. If you're going to turn down one and consider somebody else doing the same thing. I just don't understand that. We bought back there to get away from the hustle and bustle. And my understanding was that the guy that bought 1,400 knew how everybody felt back there to start with, that we wanted to stay that way. I've even had people, when I was out trying to clean up, told me that didn't even live back there. They hope it never changed because they enjoyed coming back there. They hope it never changed from the way it was. So, I mean, this is my feelings. I don't know how you could do 50 foot and then not let the other do 50 feet. Make him stay to the original setback line. I don't know how I could even consider it. I don't know how it even got this far to start with.
Yes, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Neil Zapkar, 1407 Fairview Drive. And 30 years ago, we found paradise on Fairview Drive. We just love it there. But March 3rd, 2020, the tornado had something else for us. And we had a lot of destruction on our property, had to rebuild our home. We were required to build our home back approximately 150 feet from the road. And now we have people that want to build houses on an acre of property, less than that. It would certainly destroy a lot of the beauty of the road, and well as create some congestion in that area. I've never seen. I'm also a real estate investor, and I've never seen plots of land that were small triangles like that. And it just seems like they want to chop up the property and make a mess out of our road. So as we are totally against any subdivision on Fairview Drive, and would certainly not like to see this happen. I know that there's some flag laws around, and I don't know if this is considered to be a flag situation or not, but they usually require a whole lot more property than this. And we would like to see this declined by the Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. State your name and address for the record.
I'm Pam Smith. I live at 1418 Barrett Drive. And first of all, I'd like to state that I understand wanting to have your children live next to you. My husband and I moved from California so that we could be close to our children and grandchildren. But we're living a block over. And sometimes it's nice to be able to go visit. Just saying, okay. But my concern is the beauty of Fairview Road, and the fact that this would stagger the property, which I believe is, I think it's against the protocol or whatever. And you have two properties here, and then you have property in the back. It looks, is that stacking? Is that what that's called? And then then you also have the inconsistent street line. It just changes the looks. And my property, I look out and I can see the 1400 property. It's right out our back door. And the thought of having those two houses on either side, just the aesthetics are terrible. And if they are flag properties, I think they're more like pennant plot properties, right? They're like this. But the precedent, in a way, it's exploiting the devastation that happened on March 3rd, 2020, right? And I just hate to see that happen. And you also have many houses that were destroyed where people now are buying and wanting to construct on those lands where the properties where the houses were completely destroyed. And if we set a precedent that, yeah, you can set it back 50 feet, doesn't have to be 150 feet, and it doesn't have to abide by the stacking rules, or it doesn't have to abide by the flag rules, I just think it really sets a bad precedent. And I just would hate to see that happen farther down the road. And I'm a citizen of the Clearview Estates, and it's just of a concern to me because I would love to see it. Come from California, and I love to see the beauty of the Tennessee Mount Juliet plans that they have. So I hope that you would vote no, and I thank you for listening to me.
Paige Sparks, 1405 Fairview Drive, and my husband and I are currently building our dream home there. I've been well acquainted with Mount Juliet and Fairview Drive since I was a little girl. My grandparents lived in Mount Juliet. My mom was raised in Mount Juliet, and my dad taught and coached men's basketball at Mount Juliet High School in the late 70s. My parents both remember Fairview Drive in the 70s and throughout the years, and now how it is such a special and novel neighborhood filled with dream 5-acre lots right in the middle of town. My husband and I fulfilled a dream of mine and bought a lot on Fairview Drive over a year ago. I'm so blessed we will have the opportunity to raise our little boy on these 5 acres in the middle of town right in Mount Juliet. I believe in change and progress, but I also believe in preserving the novel things in life, and Fairview Drive is definitely a novelty worth being preserved. When I tell friends and family we have land on Fairview Drive, everyone's response is the exact same. Oh, what a wonderful neighborhood filled with large lots. I believe adding these additional houses will change the integrity and novelty of Fairview Drive. The neighborhood is a neighborhood where I pictured my son riding his bike with little to no traffic on the cul-de-sac. Adding these houses to the neighborhood opens Pandora's box to continue the cycle for other lots to be broken apart. Instead of 14 houses, the potential of 20 houses is now a reality, which was not the dream we pictured when we built our home and our son riding his bike with little to no traffic. Mount Juliet has plenty of neighborhoods with half-acre and acre lots, but let's keep a novel neighborhood intact and the whimsy of owning acreage in the middle of town an actual reality. Estate lots are becoming harder to find, but a want for many people these days. With so many neighborhoods having 0 lot lines and no acreage, it doesn't make sense to change one of the very few estate lot neighborhoods in the entire county. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello. State your name and address for the record, please.
Carrie Ann Missamore, 1410 Barrett Drive. I just wanted to agree with everybody that's spoken. I totally disagree. I think these lots are ridiculous. They're triangles. It's like next we'll have tall skinnies here, and I just don't think that's what Mount Juliet is made of. So I disagree completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Brian Frost, and I'm at 1203 Clearview Drive in Clearview Estates. And I don't really have quite the horse in this race, but maybe a greyhound. Live around the corner. We love to walk up through that area and enjoy what we see there. I as well have concerns concerning the shape of those side lots. I think I could see why if someone had family they wanted to build there, how that might work while family is there, but I'm concerned, the resale of such oddly shaped lots and all just seems a bit strange. The varying offsets is not a very good aesthetic. I would agree with that as well. I kind of see where the side lots are they're trying to meet the letter of the law, but not really the spirit of the law of the size of the lots for those areas. And seem to stretch. And I have wondered, if I had been one to have purchased one of those lots, I would not be happy with that direction this is going as well. And kind of wonder would the area landowners have re-signed the covenant, keeping everything at the 5 acres, had not the tornado happened? That was just right about the time those kind of covenants should be looked at being readdressed. The tornado came through, everyone's lives got turned upside down, and a bit of conjecture here, but still something worthy of thought. So appreciate you hearing my concerns.
Thank you for your comments. Any further citizen comments on this item?
I'm Gerald Hahn. I'm 1400 Fairview Drive. I'm the one who's wanting to subdivide the lot.
Pull it down. You can pull that down.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm short. I appreciate the comments from all the folks that are trying to preserve the lot. It's not my intentions to try to take advantage of tornado victims or anything else. These lots lost their status of the covenant restriction. I had nothing to do with that. That is something that is it is now an RS 40 piece of zoned property. So I am basically trying to subdivide these lots according to the zoning. I'm not asking to do anything spectacular out of the road. I'm doing it I've been working with your planning and zoning commission or board or committee or whatever they're called. I've been working with them to try to design the subdivision in such a way that would work. And I've met with them 4 different times. So I'm not looking to do anything spectacular or out of the road. We're not looking to put trailers on it. We're going to build nice homes. That's the plan. And I don't, as far as nobody has approached me about extending the covenant restrictions. When I bought the land, nobody talked to me about neighborhood associations. I knew the intentions of the neighbors and what they wanted to happen, but nobody has approached me. Nobody has had me sign anything. I've joined nothing. I'm not part of a HOA, and the covenant restrictions have expired. So that's just where I'm at. We'd like to see this happen. We'd like to get our grandkids next door, and please consider it.
Thank you, sir. Afterwards. Okay. Gotcha. Hello, sir. State your name and address for the record and remind you got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Name is Darren Cunningham, 1401 Fairview Drive here in Mount Juliet. A little backdrop on what we have here. So this is actually a subdivision called the Harvey Thomas Properties. It was subdivided back in 1972, at which a set of restrictions were written that expired after 50 years, which is this year, 2022. Everybody on the street had one home on one lot. They're all 5 acres. Some are larger. They're minimum 5 acres. At 5 acres, you can fence it and have a horse and things like that. So that's what a lot of people did there for the longest time. And we all knew the restrictions were there. And none of us thought that didn't really come across our radar in 2020, that we should be looking to change the restrictions or extend them further, of which we all wanted them that lived there. Nobody thought to change that because nobody could predict that the largest tornado that ever hit this area was going to hit and wipe out 90% of the homes on the street, my home included. So as a result of that, we have some vacant lots. And there's not a zoning code city of Mount Juliet that is for 5 acre lots. Our largest is RS40, which is 40,000 square foot lots. So this was protected by the restrictive covenants, which have since expired. And nobody thought to, again, extend those because we couldn't predict the tornado. So that's the backdrop here. To paint a picture of what is being proposed on the Fairview Drive on this site, I've printed out a packet and given to you all. If you'll follow along, please. So the first thing that you'll see there is the overhead map, the satellite view. And if you look, the 2 little red dots there are where the proposed homes would go. As you'll see, those homes are set directly in front of the existing property. So if these were built, they would be the only 2 homes on that street that sit back off the road 50 feet. So you'd have a home very close to the street at 50 feet, which in this area, 50 feet is close to the street. In some subdivisions, it is not, but here it is. You then have the current residence, which is 150 feet back. You then have another one 50 feet in front. So you'd be stacking, which our city discourages strongly and does not let stacking happen. So strike 1. Look at the rest of the properties on the street. They're all sitting back 150 feet roughly. So there's that. I printed out some pictures so you can see the overhead view is one thing, but if you'll flip through, you will see the existing properties on Fairview Drive. These are pictures taken today to show you up to date what Fairview Drive looks like. So that's the visuals I've presented there. The properties that would be built would not look like the properties you see because the building envelope would not permit properties like that. Is that my 3-minute timer? Okay.
Please continue.
All right. So what's happened here, the fallback zoning is RS40, 40,000 square foot. So they're falling back on the 40,000 square foot because the restrictions have gone. And they've squeezed these little triangle wedges in there that are considered flag lots because there's no other category for them. Nobody thought to categorize a weird shaped triangle lot category in the city of Mount Juliet. So it falls back to the flag lots. Flag lots in the city of Mount Juliet are strongly discouraged for anything under 4 acres because they're weird. And number 2, they're not permitted, period, for anything under 2 acres. These are 1 acre. Strike 2. Okay. Staff and planning has reviewed this. Staff and planning have said the compliance letter to law is 40,000 square foot lots, whatever. So yes, they have done that, but they've given the letter to the law with a negative recommendation on this. So they've said, here's what you can do. But just as a reminder to our board here, that the compliance, and this is our words in our doctrine here, you'll see tonight, the compliance of this shall not guarantee approval. The approval shall be at the full discretion of this body tonight. So they are 40,000 square foot lots, which is the fallback zoning, but it's to our discretion of whether or not this is what's appropriate for Fairview Drive. The 50-foot setbacks, the things that we're talking about here. So to take it one step further, it kind of, you ever hear the saying, kick a dog while they're down? Yeah, I'll wrap it up on this. With my last part here.
Okay.
We all know what kick a dog while they're down feels like, or what it is, what it means. We were all, this was the hardest hit part of Mount Juliet when that tornado came through. The devastation was just, I can't tell you, physically what it's done to people in their homes is one thing. Mentally, it's the amount of counseling coming out of this. I could tell you stories that'll blow your mind. But at the end of the day, we've already been victimized enough on Fairview Drive. And the last thing we want to have is something like this as a reminder of continually being victimized and somebody preying on the natural disaster of what happened. I understand what it's like to live close to your relatives. My mother-in-law spoke here tonight. Pam did. That's who spoke earlier. We wanted them to live by us. They sold their house in California. They moved here. It's been a fairy tale, an absolute fairy tale. But they couldn't build on our lot because it wasn't compliant. So what they do, they waited until there was a home nearby to buy, and they bought it. And we live close to each other, and that's what you do. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments?
My name is Darlene Lamont, and I live at 1400 Fairview Drive. And I just want to make a comment that this is something that we have wanted. I apologize that it has made anybody feel like that we are preying on a subdivision that has been created. We love it where we're at. And we bought this land with hopes of just having our kids close to us. It was not an intention to make anyone feel like that we were preying on them or anybody that lives there, that we were trying to take advantage of what they had. So I want to apologize if that's happened. And I do apologize for that, but it is something that we have moved forward, and we will continue to move forward until we're basically can't move forward anymore. So, but I did want to apologize.
Thank you very much. Any more citizen comments at this time? Seeing no further comments, we're going to close the public hearing, return back to the Planning Commission. Any staff comments on item 6.1, the final plat for Lamont property, 1400 Fairview Drive?
That staff is not recommending approval due to the, some of the things already touched on, but basically there's not enough frontage to have the lot width required for RS40 at the building line, resulting in the irregular lots and the irregular, frontage of the house along the road. They're pushed back or pushed forward with the middle one and one in the middle. So basically the reason for that is to achieve the proper amount of frontage. So another thing that plays in there, so because of that, because you're stacking the properties, the flag lots do apply in that instance. And in that case, you're not allowed to create any lot less than 2 acres, any flag lot less than 2 acres. So that is the flag lot, rule that is violated here with this subdivision. So staff does not recommend forwarding it or recommend approval of it. Thank you.
Okay.
I will make a note. It's not typical for a small subdivision for this kind of a thing, but as a result of the tornado, there is a drain that's on the northwestern portion of this property that has caused issues. Now, I will state that we've met with a homeowner that actually where the drain's toward on Clearview. That is one that we will get to repairing as we get into a stormwater utility. But in the absence of that, if there was an opportunity, if this was to get approved for subdivision, obviously that's going to require some additional land development, at least from the standpoint of development of homes, which is impervious area, which we want to try to take a long, hard look at that. So with that being said, we would want to make a condition on that drain being cleared and repaired prior to any signing of a final plat.
Open up to planning commission for discussion. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to belabor this. I think there's a lot of great points made tonight, and from the applicant as well. I live behind that hill at the back on Fairview Knoll Drive, and my biggest concern, not only about the circumventing our flag lot law, I've got serious concerns about the stormwater that is already a major issue for the homes that are on Clearview Drive. That flood water wasn't a problem when there were trees on your lot. It was so thick you couldn't see through them. Those trees aren't there anymore. So I have grave concerns over seeing 2 more concrete pads put on that lot on the top. It's going to compound a very serious problem right now. I'm not going to support this. I'm going to motion when the rest of the commissioners have a comment to deny this.
No more further comments, sir, please. Thank you. Any other discussion items from the planning commission? Okay. Calling for a motion.
Motion to deny, rezone request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Passed. Or denied. Excuse me. Next item is item 8.1, review the PUD amendment, sign variance for Rooms to Go located off Adams Lane. Take staff comments. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We actually looked at this last month when they brought in a PUD amendment to do their 2 main signs, the Rooms to Go. They originally had sent those in for 238 square feet apiece. And then their Rooms to Go kids and patio were going to be 100 square feet apiece. At the time, the Planning Commission granted the variance to allow for the 2 main signs to be 180 square feet each, which falls under the variance for the big box retailers. After some discussion with the applicant, they had decided that they would like to come back as a PUD amendment and have all 4 signs at 180 square feet to include their 2 main Rooms to Go, then their Rooms to Go patio and Rooms to Go kid, just for consistency's sake and for aesthetics and everything. After staff reviewed, we do recommend approval of this for the consistency and the aesthetics. And it also complies with several variances that we have approved to date with this similar size building and the signage as well.
Nope. Any comments from the planning commission on this item? I think we beat this one to death last month. Okay, looking for a motion to approve or to positive recommendation to the BOC. I'll second that one. Okay. You hear the motion. All in favor, raise your hand, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. You. Okay, next we'll hear the next item, 8.2, review the major amendment, including the rezone from RS40 to CMU PUD for this village at Pleasant Grove Road PUD due to inclusion of Phase 2 Beretta property located at 555 Pleasant Grove.
All
Comments
right.
from staff?
Yes, sir. So here, I'm sure you're all familiar. Remember fairly recently the village of Pleasant Grove. This is additional acreage being added to it to the west on the other side of the church, along the south side of the church. I guess I'll just hit the high spots here, and Matt can come up and talk to some, I'm sure. But the area of the PUD's going from about 21 acres to about 32.72. So that's the size of the area here that increased. Residential density 13 even. It was, now it's gone up to 15.9, which is still below the 16.1 max. Residential units 275 in the first portion we already approved. That's up to 510 now. Commercial area 111,500 square feet, up to 159,500 square feet. It's 19% of the entire PUD. The waiver variance requests, they'll be familiar. They're the same as before, minus the one that I don't believe got approved. 10.6% open space. One thing worth mentioning here is this is going to go before the Board of Commissioners. They have to approve the Joe Beretta house as a conditional use because it's personal group care facility, and that's conditional use in this zoning district. Board of Commissioners can approve that. It doesn't need to go to the BZA. It can be approved by Board of Commissioners as part of the PUD. Generally, I think our comments here, our conditions are pretty, straightforward for this type of common for this type of development, or this phase PMDP of this type of development. So we are recommending approval. I maybe would like some explanation on the parking, shared parking arrangement, because you're going to have to approve that too, because they're requesting some shared parking arrangements with on this site. So I'll stop now.
Okay, I guess I'll take for the Public Works Engineering side of things. I'm not sure if y'all's packets had our comments or not, but Shane did print out and provide those as a separate sheet. We would request those be included for the record as part of the approvals. And so as what with that, I do want to highlight Public Work comment number 1A, talking about Pleasant Grove Road and the improvements thereof. So as I stated at the beginning of the meeting tonight, we do have Pleasant Grove Road planned. It's already under engineering for a widening realignment, basically. The section that you see in and around the paddocks, the median divided 4-lane section, that's generally the concept of what we're going to be taking further to the west and south down toward to Central Pike. So with that in mind, there is some work to be done in front of this development. And so we're not saying for them to necessarily have to build the entire portion of the road, but the road is going to be encroaching into their property. And we believe it to be the most efficient way to move forward because we know there in a lot of these kinds of things, as was for the phase 1 of the PUD, it gets down to a per lot kind of or per unit contributions toward improvements and things like that. Keeping that in mind and trying to reach and attain toward that idea of goal, I think it's far more efficient for the city to take that generalized idea of the sum, have it into a project the development team can build. They hopefully can build it a little bit cheaper. We get a project, or at least a portion of a project, faster, a win-win kind of a scenario where we get a good investment in our system that sets us up for success in the future. I think another aspect of this is, I think it is good planning to make sure that we are having any of these improvements we already have under design, which this is a unique one that we don't always get, but it is under design, that we can go ahead and not have to have a situation where development comes in, we come in, not long thereafter mess up the front yards and stuff and going in there and having to tear up stuff. It's far better while they're in there tearing up stuff that we don't have to go in and tear it up later. So again, you don't want to double up efforts. It's far more efficient that way. And so that's where I believe the cost savings can happen. Additionally, we get something a little bit sooner. So we did have some other stuff in there as well, as far as accesses and things like that, left turn lanes and stuff. So this would fit in with that. So they would be tasked with doing some work on Pleasant Grove Road as it is to their access to improve their frontage as it is. This is just trying to get them to more permanent finished product. And so with that, I think there's going to have to be some efforts with the design team for our side, as well as the development team is trying to finalize and coming up with the scope to kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. And so we have tonight, and we'll have 2 more readings with the Board of Commissioners. And so I would just ask with the comment number 1 that we would be refining that as we move forward in the development and approval process. And so that's the general idea of it. I think everything else is fairly straightforward, but we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there are any citizen comments on this item, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Matt Gardner. I'm at 4603 Skymont Drive in Nashville. The developer for this project. As you guys may remember, I was here back last year with the first phase of Village of Pleasant Grove, and we're excited to talk with you about these additions to this project. There are 2 aspects to our request this evening. First, as we dove further into the demand drivers for the office and the retail portion of that first phase, we decided we wanted to increase the square footage of restaurant, retail, and office, the commercial portions. So as your staff mentioned, we're looking to increase the allowable building size from 140,000 square feet of the main office retail building, which is in addition to the 7,500 square foot restaurant and 2,000 square foot pop-up. We're also looking to shift that into a 4-story building, whereas before we'd been looking at 3-story buildings. That does keep the height of 70 feet consistent with other buildings that you guys had approved and the BOC had approved as part of that phase 1, but just again, specifics to this particular phase of that. And so I wanted to bring it up. We feel that this reconfiguration and expanded square footage, expanded commercial space will go to the heart of the project for us, which is that village green concept in the middle that I talked about at length on the first phase. So none of that changes. This just adds to that. On the first phase that everyone voted on and the BOC has passed, those are the only changes to that. The second portion of the project, as they mentioned, is we were looking to add about 11.75, a little less, acres on the western edge of this project. We were approached by Lillian Bretta, who's here this evening, who owns that property shortly after we got approved on phase 1. And she had been trying for several years, as this commission may know, to seed the development of the Papa Joe House. It is a nonprofit named in her late husband's honor. That provides housing for patients and their caregivers for certain types of cardiac patients who must remain close to Vanderbilt Hospital. After they have the procedure, there's a lot of adjustment. I am not a biomedical engineer or a doctor, but my understanding is that the LVAT that this does basically is like a super pacemaker. So instead of just keeping your heart within a certain range, it does all of it. And I may be totally wrong on that, and she can correct me. But there's a lot of adjustment. So for weeks and months after, the patient has to come back to Vanderbilt, only hospital within several hundred miles that does this, and get it adjusted, get it tweaked, and that's at least an overnight, if not a couple of days. That can get very expensive for a lot of folks. So the Papa Joe House, the Joe Beretta Foundation right now is a nonprofit that is renting hotel rooms in greater Middle Tennessee to allow for that. So what they have been hoping to do is to build a Papa Joe house that they could then have a residential facility on this property that can have those people there to do as a nonprofit for free, to come in and provide those residential services, and the community and everybody can kind of share their experiences and support each other. So they approached us and said, hey, we'd love to sell you some land, and as part of our deal for you guys to help us seed this development. Are you interested? And we said resounding yes. A, because we thought adding to the village at Pleasant Grove sounded like a great idea. B, we felt really passionate about what they were trying to do with the Papa Joe house. And so we agreed to pay for 100% of the design of the Papa Joe house. We agreed to pay for the capital campaign and provide for approximately 1/3 of the cost to build the Papa Joe house, either by doing the work ourselves when we do the rest of our phase, or just if the timing doesn't work out as a donation. To pay for this, we went to the product that's currently paying the most per square foot for this land, which is Class A multifamily rental. We're proposing 20 townhomes and 205 flats, in addition to some entertainment retail, to steal a phrase from our planning staff friends. We're asking for continuation of the variances that were approved in phase 1 last year to apply to this phase as well. Specifically, I'd like to point out that we want to, and this was the one that was not proved, that we had kind of agreed on the conversation of utilizing outdoor amenity space and recreation areas in lieu of traditional swing and slide playgrounds. We also plan to, one of the things I know community mentioned was, we do plan to put a fence between our property and the Tillman property to the south and Beretta's property to the east. Have a lot of conversations about the kind of units. If the commission has questions, I'm happy to answer. Our units are more expensive and harder to rent than buying a house. We've got a lot of data for that if we had time to go through. In conclusion, we believe that we're excited about this project. We are, as have talked with Andy Barlow and his team, we are going to dedicate half the needed right of way for Pleasant Grove Road, basically give our half of that. We're happy to go ahead and do that and take a $5,000 per unit fee for those additional units we're adding. And you can go to that to Pleasant Grove Road widening, offsite road improvements, to help to defer a little bit of the cost for all the city improvements we're going through. I know I'm out of time.
You are.
I have more to
You
say.
are.
I appreciate your time and ask for your positive recommendation.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
That was your project. That was your representation time. So I know David's doing a great job, is he not? Appreciate it. He's doing a good job. So we got things a little bit out of order there. So in any event, citizen comment.
Okay. Entertain any citizen comments at this time. State your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
My name's Ben Reed. I live at 5101 Citation Court in Triple Crown. My concerns about the development, on top of the fact that we're adding 510 or 12, whatever it was, however you want to call it, they're apartments, whether they're, high rent or low rent, rent is up, doesn't matter where you're at. So people live where they can afford to live. The issues that we're going to have, that I feel, is that generally when people develop property, the first things they have to put in are utilities and roads. By far, the very first thing they have to do. That's the last thing Mount Juliet ever does. They build and build and build, and they worry about the roads later. Evidence is Mount Juliet Road South, all the way to Stewart's Ferry. In the morning time, it's a 40-minute commute from Stewart's Ferry to the interstate. That's ridiculous. That's on the city and county commissioners for developing that the way they did. This is the same issue. You've got 1,500 parking spaces in these two phases. Most of those, I would say, would probably have some kind of children involved. All those children are going to go to Springdale. All those children are going to go down a 2-lane road, or to a stop sign that's already congested daily. The widening of Pleasant Grove is years out. It's not before or during this project. It is years out. The widening of Central Pike, the interchange, are years out. This is not a good idea for the traffic patterns that we already have. I have 2 children that are going to be driving the next few years. That's another major concern for me. Their safety, as well as everybody else's children that are in that area that are, it's a lot of traffic for a road that's already heavily traveled. That's it.
Thanks, sir. Any more citizen comments on this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
Alex Robertson. I'm actually here on behalf of David Tillman, 180 Tillman Drive. I'm here to address the fencing. that borders the property, the farm on Tillman Drive. The term ornamental fence is too broad, and Mr. Minton is requesting that he and Imagine One discuss fence specifics before a favorable vote is agreed upon. It's absolutely mandatory that the fence absolutely stops the possibility of anyone climbing the fence, pets getting through the fence, children getting through the fence, etc. Stopping anything at all getting into the property for the safety of the person and the well-being of Mr. Minton's livestock. The farm has 60 head of cattle and a 2,000-pound bull. The fence specifics must be discussed between Mr. Minton and Imagine One before a favorable vote is decided on to ensure the safety of everyone or anything that gets through and the well-being of the cattle as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more citizen comments on this item? Seeing no comments, I'll open up for planning commission comments.
Okay.
It's all yours.
Question for Mr. Barlow. A couple of things around traffic, since that's a big concern. It is for me as well. The road improvements, number one, and let's talk about the construction vehicles. When are the road improvements going to be made? Are they going to be made up front?
Yeah, we did not actually put in a time frame for that, but I would want them to go in with the site construction itself. It just makes sense because the turn lanes would go in there anyway at that time, and the nature of the apartment commercial type development, it's really it's going to be mass graded and all done together. So with this kind of a situation, it's not going to be one of those by the 200th home or apartment or in this instance. So in this kind of instance, it really makes sense to be done up front with the site development. So for the comments on the Pleasant Grove Road, whatever we come to on a conclusion on that, I would definitely say that it would be need to be done before the building's constructed. Now, there are two different sides of this. They're about to start construction on phase one fairly soon. And so that would be, there may be some consideration there. Phase one might be able to go on and continue while we work through the phase two. But I think it definitely before the first CO of phase two would be a must. As far as the construction traffic goes, I would want to add a condition. We didn't include this in there, and I don't remember if we've captured it in phase one, may not have. But for construction traffic, we generally do include a direction on those with these PUDs. The section of Pleasant Grove Road going back to Central Pike and Central Pike itself is just not a good way to go. We would want to restrict construction traffic to the east to Mount Juliet Road only, and that way we get it to from an improved portion of Old Pleasant Grove Road or Old Pleasant Grove Road, either one, directly to the state route. All of which roads are actually built to handle more substantial traffic than the old piece. So that would ask that also be a condition added.
Okay. Excellent. He's not in his head. So we'll capture that as part of the
yes
amendment.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I'm glad no one got up here and talked about people that live in apartments. Because I live in an apartment. And I actually live in one of their products, Vintage Station North. And it's a wonderful place to live. So I'm glad we didn't go there. This too will get referred on to the Board of Commission. The Beretta's near and dear to me. I love the Joe Beretta Foundation and everything it stands for. I'm behind this project 1,000%, and I will continue to champion your cause as long as I'm still breathing. So as far as the traffic congestion, I do understand that. I get that. We're gonna make sure that is covered and addressed during the BOC as well. I know we have a traffic signal that's also coming as part of phase one. That is going to take care of what was originally going to be a hump that we were going to take down on Central Pike.
That's correct. Yeah.
Correct. So it's a very dangerous intersection. And anybody that's traveling that way knows that hill, it's you're taking your life in your own hands by making that turn. So that was already addressed in phase one. I'm going to make sure if we have to capture that again, as far as timing, we can do that as well, because this is a PUD amendment. So we are opening up that entire PUD. So it's phase one.
It was captured in phase one.
It was captured in phase one. Okay. So I do want to talk about the parking. And I want to understand, because that was a public works, or excuse me, planning commission comment. So what was specifically the issue you or concern you had with the parking?
Well, basically they're short. They achieve the parking numbers via shared with the church and with, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the multifamily building would be sharing with the office. The office building and the church would be sharing with the multifamily building. Is that correct? Yes. So it's met that way due to different peak times, I think is the intention here. So it meets the code with that. And then keep in mind, there's also structured parking. Is that potential as well?
It's a good question, and I'll kind of defer to my civil engineer who knows far more about parking than we do. But the general idea is that we have a broad parking agreement between the Church at Pleasant Grove and all the individual portions of the PUD. And so, especially with that church parking lot, as we all know, Sunday mornings, that's very busy. The offices are not. Residential is the same way, has a different share ratio, both from a market standpoint, but the code is very specific on allowable share ratios. But the general idea is when one use is busy, the other it isn't. And I'll defer to my civil engineer who knows all the ratios better than I do.
Good evening. My name is Caleb Paul with Catalyst Design Group. I'm the engineer of record for these projects. We've enjoyed working with your city departments on the preliminary entitlements and then the FMDP and LDP for phase one that your staff are currently reviewing. As was already stated, there is an active recorded parking sharing agreement between all of the properties on the recently platted church property. So that's all of the original phase one, as we're calling it, of the PUD. In your zoning code, it's sort of an esoteric section. You may or may not be familiar with it, but it is section 9-102.8 allows parking sharing within the city of Mount Juliet between certain uses, all of which we have in phase one. Those include church, multifamily, and commercial. And the idea being that those are time or those uses have time-specific parking demands. And therefore, it doesn't make sense to build an ocean of parking for things that are going to have parking demands at different times of the day. Your zoning code allows sharing up to 25% of the multifamily and the church required parking for the use of the commercial tenants. And that is what we're claiming here strictly on the phase one portion, which allows us to be fully compliant with parking for the remainder of the development. So does that answer any concerns you may have? Or address the issue clearly enough?
The other thing I'll add to that is our retail and office tenants specifically, because that's where it's really coming into play, they're far more concerned about their customers and employees parking than, not that the city's not concerned about it, but we've got to allay their concern or we don't sign the lease. And so the last thing we want to do is go in and hamstring ourselves and not be able to lease the space because we didn't provide enough parking. So there's a market aspect on addition to the code aspect that is very important that I just want to kind of remind everybody we're paying very, very close attention to. So thank you.
About the 25% and yeah, that's correct. And
Okay.
Yeah.
I got one more thing. I do want to address the fence.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Minton is his son-in-law, correct? Okay. Can we mend this to have an agreed upon fencing, or at least try to work towards that before we get to the board BOC
We're
meeting?
absolutely happy to. I know your dad's out of town, or your father-in-law, excuse me, is out of town this week. We're happy to meet with him as soon as he gets back, and I'm sure we can figure something out. Last thing we want is any of our residents getting in a pen with a bull. So that's not going to win for anybody.
And they tend to get loose in Mount Juliet for some reason.
It's
It's like every weekend there's a bull that's loose. Anyway, so I don't know if I need to make that. I can do it at the BOC too, but please work with Mr. Minton to, okay. That's it.
Any more comments there?
Redundant, but I mean, I thought the same thing too. I wasn't really, I mean, I don't want people jumping over the fence into the yard of bulls, but I was more concerned about the bulls coming over. And not to be funny, but really that's the safety concern that we have to look at as a body up here. And I just hope that that's addressed appropriately. And Matt, I always appreciate your candor and wanting to work with everybody and comply in lieu of working against it and telling us how you want to do it. So thank you for all that, as always. To belabor the point about parking, I just want to make sure that there's minimum requirements and there's standards and there's codes set in place. They don't always factor in what happens in real life. So let's just be honest. You're putting an incredible development in here, which I love and I support wholeheartedly. And in this development, you're putting in incredible amenities. You're bringing in retail and office, and you're bringing in traffic from elsewhere to the development. It's becoming an anchor at which people go to. Now, with that, you've got residents. And the residents there may want some of their friends and family to come enjoy the incredible amenities that you have there as well, which you need to account for parking for, which I know you have. And then you've got townhomes, which I presume have garages as well, correct? Yeah. And just realistically, and you know, because you've got Vintage Station North, that nobody uses their garage to park in. They use it for storage. They use it for a t-shirt shop. They use it for making crafts. They put stuff on Craigslist and all these other funny little places and have home businesses. And that's what they do in a home gym. They don't park there. So we have to account for it. That's actually a storage unit that they're not paying for, and they're parking in the overflow parking. So I just want to, not being critical of that, but you know this more than anybody. I want to make sure that's also accounted for.
So to speak briefly on the townhomes at Vintage Station North, as the building got full and parking started to become more of a, there's not a free for all because we've only, we've just turned over the last units and it's only half full, is we actually do issue parking permits. I'm sure my, resident over here can attend to it. And so there's visitor parking, and then you have a parking permit. So you can't come in and get 17 parking spaces. Or in the townhouses, we actually require you, if you have two vehicles, you're not getting a parking decal because we're requiring you to actually use that garage. So, we have extra because the same thing, we do monitor that very quickly. Our demographic of who rents our units are a little bit different than most of the other complexes in Mount Juliet, that kind of garden style apartment that tends to have more cars per unit than our residents do. But at the same time, we also we manage that parking for the residential very carefully. So you rent a unit, you get one parking space, and then we have a limited number of additional parking decals that we'll give to our residents to allow them to park. So if we get to the point where we're starting to have parking issues, we can go back and start enforcing the rules that are in place. So I do appreciate that comment. And that's, we're used to the urban infill in Nashville and other cities. And so managing that parking is always a big thing that's on the forefront of our mind. Every project I've ever done has been limited by parking, not land or height or anything else. It's always parking that limits our density that we can do. So,
well, thank you for that. And the last question I have for you is, do you have an idea of the type of tenants who will be filling up the retail space there? Have you had preliminary discussions as to what we as residents of the city could expect to be coming in there?
We do. We are, we've had very preliminary conversations. Obviously, we're, quite a ways from, going through, hopefully knocking on wood, the planning process, and then we'll design in earnest. So we're probably 9 months away from starting construction on this phase, and then we have to build it before we can start signing leases. But the tenants we've talked to have been high-end restaurants, not kind of a high, not quite a Fleming's, but a half a step below. Don't want to specifically name names because we don't have anything signed, and we know how, we can set those expectations. But, this is not fast food. This is sit-down restaurants. We've talked to, a high-end ice cream place that's very popular around Middle Tennessee that could come in to potentially. So it's more that type of a restaurant tenant. We've started having preliminary medical office conversations on the office side, which coincidentally their parking ratio is very low, which is one reason we love medical office. They don't use the same parking as, because they have so much equipment, as a law office or something. So, don't want to be too vague, but, we are looking at a significantly more expensive rent than most of the rent in Mount Juliet. And so we're going to go after the tenants that are going to drive that revenue for us to kind of push that. So, we're looking for super class A is our goal and our expectation of our leasing team.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're done.
Just got one last comment. This is not a requirement, but a hope that you and Mr. Minton could work together to try to figure out a roadway easement on the backside of that
So on
farm
phase
along
one,
an access.
Yeah, and we have not talked to Mr. Minton about that, but I've talked a lot with your public works team. We have on phase one, we agreed to a secondary access easement on phase one that will carry over to phase two. On the phase two portion on the south end of Ms. Barretta's property, we actually are doing a primary access point that is in the plans that you guys have. So, hopefully if something happens on the 14-acre piece that they have that's kind of there to the south of what we're looking at, I may be wrong on that size, we are providing access. We're proposing access to that at the request of your public works team before we even talk to the Minton family.
It requires a willing seller and a willing buyer, but I would hope that you would try to sit down and work something out. I understand it's not a requirement.
No,
It's just
well, we're proposing. I mean, that was one thing your team asked for at the very first time we talked about that. Is we're willing to give that access easement right to the property line, and if they develop or sell or do something in the future, they should already have that as part of what you guys have in front of you. On actually two of them, you got a primary and a secondary. So. We hope it's not a Walmart distribution center that's got a bunch of tractor trailers going through, but that's my request back to you. So it's low traffic going through, but yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments from the Planning Commission? We're quiet. Before we entertain a motion, this was originally advertised as 8.2 and 8.3. I read them as a singular item, 8.2. So if we make a motion, you're making on both of those at once.
Combined.
They were combined.
Motion to combine 8.1 and 8.2.
8.2 and 8.3. There was an 8.3. It wasn't on my agenda, but there was an 8.3 associated with this. Gino, am I correct?
I don't
Okay.
have an 8.3.
I didn't either.
I don't know how our agenda.
That's okay.
You're going to have to help us out, Gino. We don't have an 8.3, so we're not sure what you're.
Mine does.
It's probably the published
I'm
agenda.
sure that's legit.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so we're hearing 8.2 and 8.3 together before we entertain any motions. Just want to make that clear. That was on, I guess, the published agenda, but not the agenda that we had in front of us. Yeah. Back of the room.
Is there any objections?
Okay.
Is there
Any objections to reviewing 8.2 and 8.3 together, making a motion together? No objections. Okay, you want to try this motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to approve, positive recommendation based on staff comments and recommendations. Also, the amendment to that to add restricting construction vehicles to east directional only. And that the developer would work with staff and the property owner of the Tillman Farm to an agreeable fencing. Reading both 8.2 and 8.3 together.
I think that covers everything. Okay. So we got a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Motion passes for a positive recommendation to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? We are adjourned. Yay.